Hey everyone, this is part 2 of a 2-part series on the lore of Team Fortress 2. If you haven't watched part 1, you should probably go do that first. I went over the origins of the Man family, Australium, the dawn of Red and Blue, and the beginning of the Grey Gravel Wars. Once you get caught up, head back here for the conclusion. But allow me to preface this with a bit of a disclaimer. In the last video, I mentioned that Demo Man's story came before the Man brothers. That was just an accident. Demo is certainly not older than the Man brothers. It was just a mistake on my part. Also, some of you pointed out that I forgot to include Poopy Joe and all those events. Actually, I did. I wrote about it in the script. I have notes and everything. Pictures will be on screen. However, the audio file, it was over an hour long, and for just part 1 of a video, that would be way too much. So I cut it from the whole video. I felt like 24 minutes in the last video was pretty much the perfect length, and everyone said that it went by really quickly. However, this video is definitely going to be a long one, so hey, might as well order some takeout. So, without further ado, I hope you're ready for part 2 of the lore of TF2. When we last left off, Greyman murdered his brothers, and now, with the intent to conquer Manco, he's built himself an entire robot army. He makes his mark and begins attacking several Manco weapon, hat, and cement factories in the Badlands. These include Manworks, Coaltown, and the Decoy Base. Though our Mercs fight heavily one-sided battles, Saxton Hale helps out by selling various upgrades to their weapons along with totally new ones. Each battle is very long and sometimes tedious and frustrating and not worth it to some people, but hey, in the end they pull through and make their stand and defend their jobs. They do such a good job at defending their jobs that Greyman actually stops attacking for a few months to reorganize his strategy and make new variations of various robots. This of course leaves plenty of time for Scream Fortress antics to take place. Now let me preface this, because I consider every Scream Fortress canon until the one from 2013. However, like I said earlier, the last video was almost an hour long, so to include all those would have just bogged up the time. So let me just recap those before I plunge into this. 1968, Redmond sends the Mercs to look after his farmhouse. The ghost of his father is currently haunting them and won't leave. The next year, he sends them to look after Man Manor because the horseless headless horseman is terrorizing the area and won't leave. In 1969, after a miserable Halloween party, Merasmus summons Demo Man's haunted eye, Monoculus, to kill everyone so he can avoid doing the dishes. Now, with that out of the way, let's avoid any comments saying that I forgot about them. Halloween of 1970 was very interesting. During the short break from Greyman's attacks, Soldier thought it would be a good idea to return to the castle that he and Merasmus used to live in. I guess they upgraded from that apartment they used to have? Anyway, as it turns out, raccoons have invaded the castle in pursuit of sour cream. Soldier filled the castle with sour cream. Soldier tried to remedy this by putting all the sour cream in the fridge and then burying it in the front yard. Merasmus is coming back from some sort of trip at WizardCon, and he was appalled at what he found. His castle of ostrich horror had turned into a raccoon sanctuary in the short time that he was gone. Still trying to process all that information, a police officer arrives and tells Merasmus that he no longer lives there, Soldier owns the property, and also he's a park ranger. This angers the wizard beyond just summoning a demon eyeball. He vows to murder Soldier and all his friends, even if he has to kill Soldier twice. Despite his best efforts though, Merasmus is still incompetent and is defeated. Months went by, and the attacks continued well into December. At a meeting in Coaltown, Miss Pauling discusses with the team how they can possibly continue to fight without knowing exactly where the robots will be ahead of time. That's when Soldier tells everyone that he knows exactly when they will attack ahead of time. Nobody believes him, especially not when he unveils his tactical espionage, robot-proof disguise. Miss Pauling and Heavy both journey to Grey Gravel Co. along with Soldier to see if it really was that easy. It was that easy, and they're live to see Grey's newest robot, the Mecha Engineer. Mecha Engie quickly manages to point out that our heroes are there since he is incredibly intelligent. Somehow they manage to escape and make it back to Coaltown to plan out their next move. In 1971, not much happened other than Grey launching an attack on Medic's hometown of Rottenburg, Germany, along with Manhattan in New York. Apparently Manco had some locations overseas as well. In any case, the Mercs triumph thanks to Medic's new scientific breakthrough that allows him to bring back the recently deceased people from the dead. The Reanimator proved to be a very useful tool in the robot war that turned the tide of battle. If they died about 5 seconds ago, Medic can simply bring them back to life! It also helps that he had invented some sort of shield powered by his Medigun that can deflect damage as well. After this defeat overseas, Grey took the loss heavily and caught off the attacks for a while. All became quiet, and the Mercs remained cautiously optimistic. It was around Halloween of this year that things took a rather dark turn, and this seems to be a running theme, isn't it? Spy himself comments this on a voice line of his.
Why is it always this time of year we get assignments like this?
Now, okay, this is where I'm going to be breaking the rules a bit, because canonically they treat this event as if it's happening right after the deaths of Redmond and Plutarch. However, the update page and all the voice lines all treat the event as if it was happening later. The 5th Scream Fortress happened after Marasmus's fight with the team, so I'm presenting it as if it happened the next year. With that out of the way, let me continue. After Greyman killed his brothers, their ghosts emerge. Plutarch was confident that since Grey had stabbed Redmond to death before he stabbed him to death, that means Redmond died, and he gets all the land that they've been fighting over for the past 100 years. Redmond says otherwise, so they take a trip to Soldier's castle, who is also a lawyer because of magic, so they seek his official law-binding help. After he points out that because they're both ghosts, neither one of them is actually dead, and they need to go to heaven or hell in order to fully pass on. They both get the idea to send each other to hell themselves, so they hire the Mercs again to push the other brother to hell for them. Well, this is also kind of a loose end, because there is no definitive answer to the true winner of the Gravel Wars. Valve never said, so hey, it's all up to interpretation, unfortunately. Now it's 1972, and the robot attacks have seemingly halted. This is false hope, however. As Saxton Hale is coming back into his office from a typical day of plane jumping, he finds that Greyman himself is paying him a visit, right in front of his office. Grey offers his surrender. He knows that he can't beat the Mercs, and he does not want to be beaten by the Mercs, and he realizes that. So, he resorts to the Manco Challenge. If you can beat the current CEO of Manco in hand-to-hand combat, you automatically become the one in charge. Hale has no problem with this, and easily mops the floor with him. That is until Grey reveals that he isn't the CEO of Grey Gravel Co., his daughter Olivia is. Saxton refuses to fight a child and loses Manco, and leaves in shame. Miss Pauling rushes to find the administrator, who has already fled the scene, and in her office, only a warning for her assistant to hide is left. Flash forward 6 months and the team has disbanded. Soldier has become a tour guide for old women of the Badlands. He takes them to Tom Jones's house, who he then murders. Marasmus also lives with Tom Jones now. Miss Pauling arrives, arrests Marasmus for the murder of Tom Jones, and informs Soldier of her plans. The team is gone, and she only has vague ideas of where everyone is. Heavy went back home to Siberia, Medic has some new important job that they don't know about, Sniper went back home to Australia, and nobody knows where Engineer or Spy is. Soldier gets the idea that Scout is at the crying hospital since he accidentally broke both of his arms somehow. Hey, who knows? Anyway, they get the idea to head to Frontier Engineering, whose new president has made everyone rich and successful. And as it turns out, Pyro is their new president, who is apparently very intelligent and has mastery over engineering. I guess that's what helping get rid of sappers all day with the homewrecker will get you. Try it out sometime. Miss Pauling and Soldier find Pyro and bring him back with the help of Fire. The next person to recruit is Demoman, who's become a fat drunk over the loss of his job, much to the dismay and anger of his mother. After explaining the situation, Demo is overjoyed, quickly donning his Merc gear and heading out. After Pyro cut off Soldier's hand for complaining about being on his side of the car, they stop at a pet hospital where they learn that both Scout and Spy have both been arrested in 2-Fort and are now in jail waiting to be hanged. As it turns out, Scout needed Spy's help to get all the money he had in the bank since he couldn't use his arms because Soldier broke them. Spy begrudgingly accepts for unknown reasons, maybe at the thought of his mom being upset. He goes back with him to the bank. Shocked to learn that Scout had instead spent all his money on Tom Jones memorabilia, he gets angry and demands that only the smallest items are taken with them before they're caught by the 2-Fort police, who have been hunting them for a while. In jail, the mayor greets the two and makes fun of them, and also to reassure them that they will be hung for their crimes and killed. Spy promises to murder the mayor and everyone else at the show trial, including Scout. Meanwhile, Miss Pauling sends Soldier and Demo to head to the courthouse to stop the hanging, while she and Pyro head back to the library to look for history records. Also, Demo leaves the Islander in the car, and it's never seen again. Without anyone else knowing, though, Miss Pauling goes to have a secret meeting with the administrator in a dark alley. Here, Helen reveals that she has somehow managed to gather over 89,000 tons of Australium, which is basically the entire world supply. How she did it over these 6 months with basically no help is not explained, but what is explained is that there's one last cache of Australium left, and she tasks Miss Pauling and the Mercs she has left to go find it. She also warns them of another team that is also after it, and her, and if she were to encounter that team, she must run. Meanwhile, Soldier and Demo find their way to downtown 2 Fort, where an old lady tells them about the hanging and how the trial is merely a show just to get it over with. Spy prepares his plan to kill everyone with the help of a tiny knife that he keeps in his teeth, but not before Soldier bursts in, ready to defend his own lawyer practices. He and Demo are of course found out, and also get captured to be hung as well. Hey, why not? While all that's going on, Miss Pauling makes her way to the library with Pyro to get rid of any evidence that the administrator ever existed, presumably so that she can't be tracked down. Afterwards, the two of them rush to the courthouse to stop the hanging, which they succeed on doing after the mayor of 2 Fort is told that mayors can't actually hang people or run trial. As it turns out, the people of this town have been drinking lead-poisoned water that the 2 Fort mill has been leaking for a few years now. They're complete morons, which explains why they thought the mayor could do whatever he wanted. This is also why TF Industries gives the Mercs bottled water, which Soldier apparently had no idea about. With the 6 of them back together again, their next plan is to split up and find Sniper and Heavy. Soldier, Pyro, and Scout will head to Siberia, while Spy, Demo, and Miss Pauling will go to Australia. They aren't the only ones making progress, though. Gray Man has also been very busy recently. After becoming the new owner of Manco, he opened the secret Australium Vault in hopes of taking every last bit for himself to continuously power his life-extending machine. However, it seems like the administrator beat him to it, which he doesn't like one bit. Seemingly already knowing who she is and why she did it, he assembled a team with the help of an unknown individual. But they're apparently the best of the best. They promise to track down not only our Mercs, but Helen and the missing Australium as well. Saxton Hale has also been keeping busy. He went after his old mentor and current nemesis, Charles Darling, in hopes of using his help to get Manco back. Along the way, he runs into his ex-fiancée, who, as it turns out, is already working for Darling. Saxton very begrudgingly agrees to help him in exchange for some Australium. You see, Darling hopes to make almost extinct animals immortal so that they can forever be laughed at, hunted, or breeded. For fun, of course. He also reveals that he knows that Helen has stockpiled all the caches of the golden rocks in the world and has been playing red and blue against each other for years. And that seems to shock and utterly destroy Saxton on the inside. 3 teams assembled, one common goal. Who'll find the Australium and who'll come out on top? Heavy Weapons Guy, or Michael, or Misha, whatever you want to call him. He's gone back to Russia to live with his family. Soldier, Scout, and Pyro have been tasked with finding him and getting him back. He seemingly wants nothing to do with them as he ignores Miss Pauling's favor to call her. After asking about his whereabouts, Soldier and the others face communist mountains, hallucinations, and bears! Lots and lots of bears! This is also where they learn the dark secret regarding a certain someone that people have been questioning for years. That's right. As it turns out, Amelia Earhart died in the Russian mountains with a plane full of honey. The honey attracts the bears that I mentioned earlier, who have come to satisfy their sweet tooth and kill everyone. However, pulling together, Scout and Soldier manage to kill 2 of the bears, while Pyro defends his love of fire. Heavy arrives just in the nick of time to announce that they only killed baby bears. The mother bear arrives, resulting in a climactic battle between herself and Heavy. We cut away from that to learn that Gray Man and his daughter Olivia have come to 2 Fort to search for records regarding Helen. The same records that Miss Pauling burned already. We also learn how 2 Fort was originally founded as Hugginsville, as the founder hid under the dead bodies of his family members after a bear killed all of them. After being forced to rename the town to 2 Farts, he eventually renamed it to 2 Fort instead. You know, I would have included this in the first part, but given how unreliable the town is, I wasn't sure if it was worth including. So hey, threw it in here. Anyway, back in Russia, Heavy and his mom have cooked the mother bear for dinner and saved his friends. Soldier faces a boring moral choice. Scout learns the value of the waiting game. We learn that Spy and Sniper are hot, and Soldier signs a Russian peace treaty. After being persuaded by his very attractive and very Russian sisters, Heavy decides to come back to the team. This time with his family by his side, never to be forced to run or eat bear meat ever again. Afterward, Miss Pauling, Demo, and Spy head to Australia to locate Sniper and bring him back to the team as well. However, after being unable to find any remaining record regarding Helen, Greyman returns to his base and has another meeting with that mysterious man from earlier. As it turns out, though, it wasn't just any ordinary team of mercenaries that Grey had hired. The best of the best is none other than the Mercs of Team Fortress Classic! The very same group that had been tossed aside by Redmond and Blutarch for their old age are now working for Grey to track down Helen and our Mercs! But they aren't alone. You may have noticed that they're short one man. Their medic position seems to be empty, which is where Medic comes in. Our lovable, insane German doctor has teamed up with the TFC team and seemingly does not care in the slightest that he'll be hunting his old friends. Regarding them as mere experiments, he's ready to move out. Everyone is now heading to one common location, Australia, where the strongest and most powerful fighters on the planet and the smartest minds to ever be born call home. This mystical land of muscular men, where gleaming utopias are real, are all thanks to the power of Australium. That's what all three of our teams are after, so let me get on with it. Heavy and Scout are heading out to Ayers Rock to recover any Australium that's left there, because that's where it was originally found. Heavy feels like there isn't to be found, and the two of them have a slight bonding experience anyway. Soldier and Jana, Heavy's sister, who is now married to Soldier and is just as powerful as her brother, have infiltrated an Australian submarine base to steal their sub and gain access to the magical land of New Zealand, where there's supposed to be some Australium as well. Spy is also there to presumably babysit the two of them. Like I said, he just supervises. Miss Pauling and Demo have gone to look for Sniper, who seems to have ended up at his childhood home. At Ayers Rock, Scout and Heavy have no luck informing Miss Pauling that they made it, so they decide to just check things out without her. Shockingly, Ayers Rock is a facade, used to just cover up the mining operations of the natives. The two of them enter, but are quickly attacked by the return of Saxton Hale! After remembering who they are, he and Maggie free Scout and cue our favorite Mercs in on their plans and situations. Double shock! There is no Australium left in all of Australia! So Heavy, Scout, Maggie, and Saxton agree to team up and take down the men that stole it and beat their heads in. In case you were wondering what happened with Miss Pauling and Demo Man, they had indeed traveled to Sniper's house and were knocked out and captured by the professional killer. He wants answers. His parents died 6 months ago, and when he was looking through their stuff, he found nothing related to himself when he was a child. It was as if he just fell out of the sky one day. No trace. Everything has a trace except for him, and he knows that if anyone has the answers he's looking for, it's Miss Pauling. She very easily goes along with him, stating that they were traveling to meet his real parents anyway. His parents somehow ended up in the fantastic mystical land of New Zealand that sank around 40 years ago. They came to not only grab him for their adventure, but take him along with them to find his parents and the last of the Australium. The two of them head out, dragging Demo along with them to meet up with Spy, Soldier, and Jana to take the submarine that they've procured. Soldier and Jana brief one another with how dangerous the mission be, with Soldier stating that his bride should use extreme prejudice when fighting the Aussies. Spy interrupts, so Jana uses her extreme prejudice skills against him. He reveals that he already has the keys to the submarine they wanted. He didn't have to fight or do anything. The sailors simply gave the keys to him. It's not like they're going anywhere. Not convinced that the strongest fighters in the world would just give something away, Soldier, with the help of Jana, snaps the neck of a sailor, but are stunned to realize that nobody really cares. Performing a tactical neck fix, the three of them board the submarine, eventually picking up Miss Pauling and the rest of their team. Miss Pauling, Sniper, Soldier, Spy, and Demo Man, and Jana, and Pyro, no idea where he was during all this by the way, make their way to New Zealand while Miss Pauling unveils the history of the Lost Country. 40 years ago, the artists, the intellectuals, basically all the introverted smarty pants decided to move to New Zealand to be left alone. They built a dome over the city and sunk it into the ocean. This bewilders Sniper, who at first doesn't believe them, but soon comes face to face with his real dad. Sniper's dad, a man by the name of Bill Bell, convinced the Council of New Zealand to sink the city for fear that the entire world would soon be covered in magma. He now realizes that they have to go to space, but the council wasted all their money, so he built a rocket just for himself. But his wife didn't like that, so the two of them fought over it. Their little baby, Mundy, climbed into the rocket himself and crash-landed in Australia, where he was found by Mr. and Mrs. Mundy. That means Sniper's full name is Mundy. Weird. Also, New Zealand is completely flooded. Also, the stunning realization is met. Sniper is not actually Australian, he's a New Zealander. However, Mundy doesn't have time to be shocked because there's more pressing matters to deal with. You see, the last cache of Australium was there, but Bill Bell used it to paint all of his prototype rockets that blew up, and the last rocket that he hasn't tested yet. Sniper's mom, Larna, gathers all her wine and boards the rocket herself, blasting off into space and taking the last remaining supply of that golden magic rock stuff left on Earth with her. All is lost when the land around them begins to flood once again because she crashed through the dome again, and Bill Bell steals their submarine to save his own skin. Just when the idea of his dad coming back with a change of heart comes up into his mind, Sniper is shot to death by the sudden arrival of the Team Fortress Classic team with Medic on board with them. Everyone is captured and brought to Greyman's fortress. Greyman pays the TFC Classic leader, who I will be addressing as TF Classic Heavy, or just Classic Heavy from this point on. Classic Heavy, however, begins to question Greyman and realizes that his team isn't getting any younger. Meanwhile, Soldier is tortured by Classic Pyro, who is a woman. So there's your answer to the is Pyro a boy or a girl theory. Classic Pyro is in the middle of torturing Soldier when accidentally he reveals that only Miss Pauling knows where to find the administrator. Classic Heavy comes in with Greyman ready to have him tortured for no real reason other than fun. However, he does remember that he wants his backpack, so he rips off Grey's life-extending machine to use for himself. Zana is able to use the glass from the broken machine to free herself from her cuffs and violently kills Classic Pyro. Soldier and Zana reunite, but Grey insists that they take him to Miss Pauling. Miss Pauling, Spy, Demo, and Pyro are all locked up in the same cell waiting to be tortured by Classic Pyro. Demo Man, though, seems to be going through his own torture, a side effect of only eating bread and water. Miss Pauling laments how she failed the one mission the administrator asked her to do, and how she's gonna die. Spy attempts to comfort her in the only way he knows how, with a suicide pact. Cracking a cyanide molar, he prepares to spit half of it into her mouth when Heavy bursts into the room! Our Heavy! The two of them rejoice, but not for long. Heavy tells them how he had to fight through a horde of robots to get here, and will only manage to buy them a little time so Miss Pauling can escape and get to the administrator. This is Gray's Island, after all. It's covered in robots. That is when the Classic Demo Man opens the door with a phone call for his friend. Heavy was not real, and was actually the Classic Spy in disguise. Having gotten all the information they wanted, Classic Spy gives the order to have our heroes killed, when Zana and Soldier make their way into the room, snapping Classic Spy's neck in the process, and letting Spy kill Classic Demo. Waking up from the shock of taking a punch from Zana, Miss Pauling is alive, but has a bit of a stuffy nose. Greyman crawls onto the floor after being dragged there by Soldier and his insane Russian wife. Grey tries to explain his plans to Miss Pauling and how Helen was probably the worst person who could have possibly had extended life. Miss Pauling jumps to the defense of her boss and gives a great speech about how she's ready to help her no matter what. Unfortunately, Grey died halfway through the speech thanks to his lungs falling out the hole in his back. She had his full attention until that moment though, so bonus points? Meanwhile, high above the island base, high above the clouds, high above Earth even, up in the Kingdom of Heaven, God's secret base. Sniper is reluctant to come back to life thanks to the effort of Medic and Archimedes. He'd rather stay in heaven with his real parents. They think otherwise, however. As much as they'd love to be reunited with their son, a lot of men need killing by a professional. With the confidence of his parents by his side... Sniper leaves heaven and wakes up in a cold sweat in Medic's lab. Medic's excitement is cut short by his former colleague grabbing him by the throat and is ready to bash his smug and evil genius brains in. That is until he realizes that he has no fear of death, since he knows what's waiting for him on the other side. Also after being convinced that Medic wasn't actually evil and that they just needed a medic, and he just happened to take the job. At first I was wondering why Medic didn't just use his reanimator on him, like when they fought together in Rottenburg, but then I remembered the reanimator only works when they've been dead for maybe 10 seconds at max, not 12 hours. A little late, right?
Bloody hell! You're a miracle worker, Doc!
Regardless, Sniper is ready to get back to work. That is until Classic Heavy enters the room to presumably ask Medic to come help him in battle. That's cut short though when he's enraged to find out Sniper is alive and that Medic of all people brought him back. He kills Archimedes in his silent anger, which quickly grows to loud anger when he lists off all the things that Medic has done against his will. So when he finds out that Classic Pyro, Demo, and Spy are all dead, his rage reaches a fever pitch and is terrifyingly furious. Sniper leaves in the middle of the argument, and Classic Heavy orders Medic to stay put while he deals with our Mercs. Outside, Miss Pauling and the others are racing for some kind of escape off the island, while Classic Heavy bombards them with a horrifying video call. As it turns out, Greyman knew that Australia was out of their precious metal, so he had an all-out invasion of Australia planned out, and he even made a small army of leech robots that would suck the Australium out of the bloodstreams of its people. Classic Heavy took control of these robots and is going to sick them on our heroes. Now, our team doesn't have any Australium inside of them. They know that, and Classic Heavy knows that, but the robots, they don't know that. So they're just gonna keep digging in their blood until they find some. Classic Heavy lets those robots loose while he tries to figure out how to use Grey's life-extending machine properly. Our Mercs are left to defend themselves while getting strangled to death by leech robots. Now, while that's all going on, allow me to address something that I was ignoring. Back when the gang was fooling around in Australia, a meeting between the administrator and Del Conager, or rather the engineer, took place. Yeah, I bet you've been wondering where he's been, huh? Anyway, he's been helping the administrator with her own life-extending machine, presumably this entire time. Truthfully, he's already built her 4 versions of a life-extending machine, and is now placing the 5th version on her. However, he realized that once the supply runs up, Helen's gonna die. She brings up that she doesn't need to live any much longer, only long enough to settle an old debt. Whatever that debt is, I'm not sure. I didn't bring this up earlier because I didn't want to break the pace, seeing how this came right after funny sniper antics and right before funny soldier antics. Didn't want it to break the mood. Anyway, back on the island, Miss Pauling wakes up to find herself in a desert, just as she normally would, I guess. Although, this time things are different. A door to the administrator's office is right in front of her, and she's able to speak with her boss, just like always. Really though, this is where Helen always goes when she dies. Mostly just for an hour or two, and then she heads right back to the living world. But this is where she goes when she dies, meaning that if Miss Pauling is there, it means she's dead too. And that's all that matters. She's dead, she failed her mission, and she's made fun of for it. Miss Pauling asks what her boss even wants to do with the Australium, and what her overall plan is, and where she fits into her plan. And Helen answers instead with the questioning of her loyalty. Miss Pauling asks again, what does she want? And all she can say is that she needs blood. Helen needs more blood. Actually, that was just a hallucination, because Medic has already brought everyone back to life, because of course he did. Dude's a genius. So whether or not Miss Pauling actually ended up in some kind of weird purgatory respawn room-like type of thing, it's up to your interpretation. But what is important is that she's alive, and so is everyone else. But what about the blood-sucking killer robots? Why, Demo just got all of them drunk, of course. His blood is filled with alcoholic content because his body is able to brew its own booze, because of course it is. Also, his liver comes back into his life, so things are pretty good all around. The team is back alive, and nothing can stop him now. Actually, I lied. I seem to have a bad habit of doing that to you guys. Classic Heavy's been watching them the entire time, and is planning on the next phase of his attack. He's also been going slowly insane with the idea of becoming immortal and making his team the same way. Also, he's talking to the machine as if he's actually talking to another person. Classic NG has been listening to this the whole time, and he and the remaining survivors of the Classic team, they don't want anything to do with that, and they just want to get paid. The thing is, Classic Heavy has never killed the guy that's paid them before, so they're all kind of on edge. They don't really want to do this, they just want to leave. Classic NG is also unable to make any more life-extending machines because they're beyond his skills, and the overall lack of the material. Classic Heavy orders his engineer to unleash the last of Greyman's stock horde of robots to murder the TF2 Mercs. Before any of that can happen, the real Heavy and Scout parachute into the battle thanks to a plane ride from Saxton and Mags. Scout gives Miss Pauling a big hug, causing blood to squirt out from her eyes. Heavy and Jana reunite as well, though he's concerned that his little sister is missing a hand and is now married to Soldier, who of course plans on having kids. I guess a neck of human ears is just a common wedding trope. Who knew? Scout catches Miss Pauling up to speed on the status of Saxton Hale and the Irish Rock having no more Australium, but before they can talk about anything else, a massive horde of robots comes in to butt in on the conversation. Wondering where Saxton is, they're left to fight for themselves, but as you can see, Saxton and Mackie, they were too busy reminiscing to jump out of the plane in time. So now, with no weapons and no Australian muscle, they're trapped on both sides with nothing to help them. Basically, they're all gonna die. Again. However, once Sax and his former lover realize they need to jump, they prepare themselves and all the weapons they brought with them. Saxton asks Maggie to run Manco with him once he gets his company back with the help of Charles Darling. Not sure how that's gonna work out since there's no more Australian. Also, Maggie doesn't reply to that. Bad move, dude. That is not how you get your ex-girlfriend back. Trust me, I've tried. Surrounded on both sides, our heroes don't really see a way out of this. That is, until Scout is bonked on the head by a crate full of sub-machine guns, and a glorious entrance that can be rivaled by none. Saxton Hale and Maggie fall out of the sky with a plane crashing next to them, and crates of dangerous weapons floating beside them. Even an old familiar friend is dropped off, leading to what was about to become a heap of blood and guts is instead a new scrapyard. They're not the ones trapped in a facility full of robots. The robots are all trapped in there with them. While this big fight's going on though, things aren't all as well. Classic Sniper has his crosshair right on our Heavy's forehead, but he's stopped just in the nick of time when Classic NG bangs on the door demanding to be let in. He tells his friend that 3 of their friends are dead and that Classic Heavy is demanding to see both of them in the comm room. Classic Sniper is annoyed that he's called off his posts, so he shoots his NG in the leg, revealing him to be Spy in disguise. Whether or not Spy killed Classic NG is unknown. But for what it's worth, Spy did a pretty good impression of Classic Sniper's best friend. You see, he had Classic NG implant robotic eyes that can see through the disguises of spies, so naturally he wasn't fooled whatsoever. Meanwhile, our Sniper is running across the building thanks to their plan failing. Classic Sniper congratulates Spy and even offers him a cigarette, because professionals have standards. What professionals don't do is monologue. They take the shot. Sniper reminds Spy of that, and all Spy can say is that he hates snipers. The two of them collapse beside one another and have a cigarette before moving on. Once the fighting stops, or at least in another corner of the island where there aren't any robots, Medic is healing Demo while telling him about how he saved Sniper. That's when Demo asks the most obvious question of the last 12 years. If Medic can do all these amazing things, why doesn't he just heal Demo Man's eye? Medic responds with a very simple answer. He has healed his eye before, and it's a very easy procedure. However, every time he does so on Halloween, the eye always turns into some sort of monster, creature, or beast they have to fight, like a vampire or a time-traveling pirate or something. The Bombonomicon did not just haunt Tavish's eye, it haunted the eye socket as well. So obviously, he just can't have an eye anymore. In order to make him stop asking him to do so, Medic just removed the part of the brain that makes Demo want his eye back. Sadly though, brain scooping is not an exact science, so Tavish will eventually remember sometimes. But with his injuries healed, he's back in the battle. While Medic's cleaning up, he's found out by Classic Heavy. Classic demands that Medic goes back to his lab and sews the life-extending machine into him. Or rather tells his guy how to do it, because he knows that if Medic puts him under for surgery, he'll just kill him. Not like Medic is known to put his patients under anyway. He insists that he would never let him die on his operating table. Instead, he'll die right where he stands. In a stunning turn of badassery, Medic stabs Classic Heavy in the face and chest with his Uber Saw. However, since Combat Medic is not a very effective strategy, he's overwhelmed. Medic pleads that he's the only one who can help him, to which Classic just scoffs at. Medic was just the closest, and now that he knows where the Administrator is, he can find her himself and take whatever he wants. The fight, though, is broken up when our Heavy finally arrives and has no hesitation to kill the insane former team leader. Being an honorable man, though, Heavy's willing to give his opponent a fair fight. Seeing this as his chance, Classic Heavy pulls out his side piece and fires 2 shots into Medic's chest, killing him instantly. Heavy's stunned and can barely speak. When Classic points out that 2-on-1 is not a fair fight, Heavy is just not listening and he breaks into a blind fury. Hey, are you wondering where Pyro was? Well, of course not! Well, let me tell you where he is anyway. Because as it turns out, Classic Scout and presumably the Classic Soldier are gearing up to go kill our Mercs. Greg doesn't want to go through with this, and he instead brings up Ross's old dream of starting up that orphanage together. They aren't getting any younger, and this is obviously a suicide mission at this point, so why go out and fight? So they agree to found a new orphanage to gain access to all the free children they could ever want to presumably use for slave labor. Because their dream is interrupted when Greg realizes that Ross is covered in gasoline. Thanks to our pyromaniac friend. Pyro murders them, which catches the attention of Scout and Miss Pauling, who seem to have been stranded by themselves. How the team managed to split up like that is unknown to me. Scout and Miss Pauling seem to be all by themselves. That is, until they look slightly to the left and into the event horizon. Because they get to witness the most American murder spree of all time! Full frontal honey-covered nudity in its most concentrated, patriotic form. Soldier and Jana are having a blast destroying the robots, while Scout decides that he'd rather be somewhere else that's less naked. Saxton Hale seems to be surrounded by robots, which is not a problem if you ask me, but Mags of course comes to his aid, primarily to mock him and how much he'll miss these bare chest brawls when he gets Manco back. Miss Pauling also gets a phone call from the engineer who asks about the status of the missing New Zealand cache of Australium. Unfortunately, the administrator is temporarily dead and can't come to the phone herself. Having to deal with the bad news, Engie prepares himself for what he'll have to tell his boss when she eventually wakes up. However, back to the fight you actually care about. Heavy is beating the life out of Classic Heavy, who even for a moment tries to negotiate with the Russian man. However, his doctor was killed, and all Heavy and Medic mains know what that feels like, so the beating continues and becomes more and more intense. Seemingly defeated, Heavy berates his opponent as he doesn't care about living forever, only long enough to see his opponent die. When his back's turned though, Classic Heavy grabs Greyman's life extender, life extending machine and jams it into the open side of his chest. It powers on and fills him with the raw power of Australium, and round 2 of the fight begins. Cutting away once more, Sniper and Spy are having a bit of back and forth regarding Sniper's overall lack of clothing. Spy has no plans whatsoever to give up his extremely expensive suit that cost him just around $10,000. No wonder he complains when you get blood on it. Anyway, their argument continues until they find the dying body of Scout. Sniper tries to get a few words in, but Spy cuts him off. Scout is dying on the floor and about to head to the great beyond. Spy tries to comfort him as best as he can, but it doesn't last long and he leaves. That doesn't matter though, because suddenly Tom Jones arrives on the scene to talk to the dying boy. He reveals that 27 years ago he dropped a terrifying sex bomb on Scout's mom and ran away from the blast. But now it's time to face the consequences of his actions, and he's here to tell his son how proud of him he is. Scout dies peacefully knowing that not only is his dad Tom Jones, but his dad is also proud of him. As Scout dies in his arms, Spy changes out of his disguise and holds his dead son close to his chest. He was proud of him no matter what, and he always was. That moment, though, is cut short with Jeremy's arrival in heaven as God himself finally meets him as soon as he arrives. God is thrilled that Jeremy is finally here and that they can finally hang out. He flexes for his holiness and is thrilled to find out that God wishes that he was his son. Also, as it turns out, Scout was God's gift to humanity, and it was put there so women all around the world would have sex with him. Infuriated that that didn't happen, God is prepared to utterly destroy the Earth, but is talked out of it by Scout himself. Realizing that he shouldn't be dead anyway, God sends his son back to Earth to finish the fight, and snaps the real Tom Jones's neck a second time to avoid Scout finding out the truth behind his father. Back on Earth, Heavy's getting his ass handed to him by the supercharged Classic Heavy, but Medic, he's also still dead. So in Hell, Medic is having a meeting with the devil because he doesn't want to go to Hell. However, since Lucifer owns his soul, he obviously gets to keep him. That is, until Medic points out that he has surgically added 8 more souls to his body, so that the devil now only owns a stake in his soul supply. However, in order to get his way, Medic convinces the Lord of Evil that since he was persuaded to sell his soul once, it'll obviously happen again, eventually. So, in exchange for an office pen, Medic is sent back to Earth for another around 50 years or so, and rejoins the battle with Classic Heavy getting ready to murder our Heavy. Medic stops him in his tracks by announcing that he's filled Classic's body with baboon uteruses and has a button that can induce pregnancy, and 3 baby baboons will burst out of his body! That's a hoax, but Classic falls for it long enough for Heavy to rip the Australium out of his body, which slowly kills him right on the spot. I'm not sure why or how it kills him so fast, when it took Greyman about 30 minutes to die off when he got separated from his supply. Maybe because Classic Heavy had already sustained a ton of injuries and was dying anyway? Well, with his age rapidly catching up to him, he's slowly dying on the floor. Sniper, Spy, and Scout reunite with the others, and they all gather around Medic and Heavy, who are watching Classic Heavy die just for fun. Unfortunately though, all the Australium ran out during the fight, leaving Miss Pauling completely empty-handed. As he dies out, Classic Heavy has one question to ask. How? How did a team of idiots manage to defeat the world's best? While Medic has his own theories, Miss Pauling has one clear answer. They're Team Fortress! And he's dead! At or around 5 hours later, somewhere at the coordinates 32.3451 degrees north and 106.5614 degrees west, or at the Oregon Needle in New Mexico, something important's going on. The administrator wakes up from being dead and is relayed the news that all the Australium from the surface of the Earth is gone. There is no more. She can't accept that and lets the anger get the best of her. After being escorted back to her private quarters, she seems to be preparing for something. While that's going on, for the first time in his life, Engineer asks her what her overall goal is. What is that debt that she has to settle? He reminds her though that this is the end. Her life is over. Her goal is over. It's over. She comes to terms with that. She figures though that if she's gonna go, why not go off with a bang? Using all of the very short supply of Australium that she has left, she reverts herself back to her prime, much to the dismay and bewilderment of Engineer. Having barely an hour left to live, if that, she prepares to finally settle the score once and for all. To be concluded! Yep, that's right, still waiting on the ending. It's only been 3 years since this bi-monthly comic came out. Also, with the confirmation that it isn't even being worked on, us fans have nothing better to do than sit and wait for either the next major game update or the final conclusion to the story. You know, personally I think it would be awesome if instead of having a final comic, they just animated like a 25-minute SFM movie with all the voice actors and everything. That's just a hope. It'll literally never happen because Valve exists, and Valve doesn't do things like a normal company. Regardless of that, and regardless of the cliffhanger ending and the lack of updates, I think these comic stories and the lore surrounding the game is phenomenal, and it's easily one of my favorite fictional stories and fictional worlds, bar none. It's really a shame how badly this game is treated by Valve these days. But I say we should rise up and ask the questions that really matter. What is hell instead? What did Greyman plan to do with his extended life? What did Classic Heavy plan to do with his extending life? Why does Engineer have both of his arms? Did you catch that? What happened to the Islander? What happened to the puppy that was also with the Islander in the car? What happened to Sniper's dad? What happened to Sniper's mom? There's just so many things. Did Giuseppe ever figure out what Italy is? These mysteries might just remain mysteries for years to come. And that's super infuriating. But what isn't a mystery is our love for this game and the characters that it's created. From Heavy screaming Putis and Scouts yelling for dispensers, to Saxton Hale punching robots and Tom Jones getting his neck snapped, the lore of this silly hat simulator is great. So great, it deserves its own short film. So great that there's YouTubers all around the world making videos about it, including yours truly, including the channel you're watching it on. This game is phenomenal. So I guess I still have to thank Valve for creating one of my favorite things of all time. And I also have to thank you for watching this incredibly long video. Thanks to Sin for allowing me to share it on his channel, and again, thanks to Valve for creating this timeless masterpiece. This video and everyone before and after are of course brought to you by Patreon. A small donation, no matter the size, helps me make videos like the one you're watching, so hey, by all means, help you out if you can. This is easily my biggest video yet, and I have no idea how I'm going to top it. Regardless of if I do or don't, thanks for supporting the show, and keep playing this game, because TF2 will never die.